Yes, we are. Okay, welcome everybody, and I really appreciate you all joining in for this. I know that it was like a last minute program, and we are in the middle of changing over the 97153, the codes that are filled out by the paras/RBTs, basically the individuals that are giving direct services to the kids. And we have a lot of interesting choices and down buttons. And this is by no means a training on how you click on those buttons. This is only a training so that you understand what the terminology is, so that when you click on the right button, on the right word, you understand what these words mean. Okay? So we're going to start with prompt levels. And I want to thank Rebecca. She's now made a Tree of Knowledge Learning Academy ABA reference guide for staff training, and it goes through this terminology. My understanding is this 97153 code is only at the first version, and they're making some changes, but it doesn't make a difference. Whatever changes come out on the computer, these terminologies are very important for you to understand what they mean, okay? Those of you that have taken the RBT test should primarily be more knowledgeable about these terms. But you know what? I'll tell you that I went through multiple master's degrees, and when I came to the ABA world and they started using these fancy dancy terms, and I had been working with students for over 20 years, I was like, what are you saying? So quite frankly, I understand some of your frustration, like, yeah, this is what I'm doing. Why are these specialty words for this? But these are words created by the ABA movement, and we have to follow them. One thing I caution all of you, and this is important, that while you may become very proficient in this terminology, especially as we move through improving the software, your parent body are not necessarily proficient, or the schools that you're working with, or the centers. And so we have to be careful while we understand this language. It's not the normal, typical language that most people speak, okay? So let's use the word prompt level, right? So when I was doing and practicing ABA before I became a BCBA, working as a school psychologist, prompt level just means how much are you actually helping the child, all right? It's an important word because instruction requires prompting before a kid is actually going to learn it, all right? I'm going to go through the different versions of prompting. It's basically how are you helping that student learn the behavior that you're trying to teach. So no prompts mean the learner completes the task independently without helps, without cues. So for example, if you're teaching a child touch your nose and automatically the child touches their nose, that's without a prompt. But remember, what I just did now on video, which you can see, is actually a model prompt. Actually touch my nose. Sometimes you don't even realize that when you say something, you're modeling it without even knowing that you're modeling it, and the kid does it, but it doesn't mean he understands touch your nose. You by mistake modeled it. And you know what? I had a lot of that when I was a reading specialist. I actually saw videos of me teaching the Wilson Reading Program, and I didn't realize it till I watched the video how much prompting through modeling I was doing and how much movement my mouth was doing to try to get a kid there. So you may not even be aware that you are actually using model prompting. So you have to be careful. When you say there's no prompts, it means you did not show the child how to do it. You did not help him lift up his fingers. He automatically knows how to do it. So that's no prompts. Full physical prompts is you are basically taking, let's go back up with, this concept of a nose. You are taking the hand of a child and you are pointing to their nose, okay? And that's what we do with younger kids. Therapist places their hand over the learner's hand to help them pick up a block. Pick up the block. Takes the hand, picks up the block, okay? That's a full physical prompt because we are moving their physical body. A partial physical prompt. Therapists provide some assistance, but only partially. So maybe you lift the hand, okay, to touch the nose, but then they touch the nose by themselves, all right? So it's only partial. You're not actually lifting their hand, touching the nose, okay? So that's a partial. Model prompt, which is, I think, what most people are just used to, which is you demonstrate the desired behavior for imitation. We do this all the time. I do, you do. Okay. Watch me. Now you do it. That's model. Okay. So an example of that, therapist claps their hands. I do. The student responds. You do, if they can actually copy the behavior, right? But we have students the first time, and I think this is really going, so it's interesting because really the no prompt should be at the end, but it should be going from the most to the least. So like the full physical prompt where you're taking the kid's hands, right? In the clapping example, and you're clapping it with their hands, right? That's like a full physical. Maybe you don't do it 100%. Maybe you just take their arms and you just sort of like, and they actually clap it. That's the partial physical. And the modeling is really sort of like the ultimate goal, because we want that you do, I do, you do. Okay. A visual prompt would be that they're looking at a picture. You're not modeling it with your actual body. So an example of that would be a picture of a child um, brushing their teeth, right? And you have a visual schedule of all the different steps that you have to go through in order to brush your teeth, right? So you're not actually doing the steps, modeling it. You're just showing them a picture. By the way, I don't exactly know how the step downs are going to work, but there are many times where you kind of do a combination, right? First, you do a visual prompt. I know you're going to ask this question. Then maybe you do a partial physical prompt. Then maybe you do a model prompt. You actually brush your teeth, and show the child how you brush your teeth. So there are times where you'll be using multiple versions of prompts, and you probably should do that because that's a healthy thing. It should probably not be only one certain prompt. If it really is only one prompt, then you can pick. And so it's something to think about, Faggy, that there are times within a session you're using multiple versions of prompts. And then a verbal prompt. Okay. So I saw this yesterday, where after a child was sitting down, they got up, they pulled out their chair, and the RBT said, remember, push into your chair. So a verbal prompt. Okay. I want to caution the verbal prompting, because we want to be careful that we don't talk so much, even though I'm talking so much right now. But we want to avoid that because it's like it gets repetitive. And the ideal situation is that you just point to a picture of the chair being put back, and you just go like this, and they do it by themselves. The reason that I caution you with verbal prompts is because the less we speak and the more we just point to or we use a gesture, the more kids become closer to independence, and we stay away from being that nagging person. Okay. Gestural prompts, which is what I was talking about just now, which is either pointing to the chair, or you actually created a gesture for it. So for example, you have the more gesture, right? And you want the child to use this gesture. You could be giving them a gesture for it. And since more is a very universal one, you may have to develop some that are not universal. So, and I really speak to RBTs to do this. If there's certain things that the children that you're working for, or as they say in ABA language, the kiddos, and you I don't want you talking so much. Just making a certain sign, especially when you're with them in the classroom, so that they don't get embarrassed. Like, put back your chair. That may put them out, like, single them out. But if you have maybe like your hand like this with the chair going into the table, I'm just making this up on the spot, and you just go like this to the kid, oh yeah, I got to put the chair back to the table. So it's very good, by the way, to make a few gestures that are made up, but that are apropos, that you can actually point to, so that the kid knows what he needs to be able to do. I'm going to go back to verbal prompt for a minute. I was sitting in a preschool classroom yesterday, and we were watching a child with autism, and their feet were all over the place. And one of the big ones used in preschools is crisscross applesauce. That's a verbal prompt. And the kid would then know, fold your feet. I now heard that that's been updated from crisscross applesauce to make your feet like a butterfly. So whatever verbal prompts remain, whatever physical prompts, whatever gesture prompts, make sure that you stay consistent with those prompts and that we don't embarrass this kid publicly, um, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's in the community, that it's something that he, with you, with the family, know what the meaning of those words are. Okay, so that concludes all the different prompting that we provide our kiddos when we're working with them. And obviously, we are heading towards independence. So, really, the top one of no prompting is where you want to get, right? You want to be able to give them an instruction, whether it's verbal, via gesture, however way you taught them, that they actually can do this independently. But it's not going to happen right away, right? So you have to be aware that prompting is a very big piece of what we do, and it has to be a very big piece of your notes, because what we're trying to see is, are we getting away from full physical prompting, towards just a verbal prompt or gesture prompt? We want to be able to see this progress, and that's why this becomes so vital in the note-taking process. All right, now, a definition of behaviors. And again, this is very general. You guys are reading reports, which will probably explain the behavior a little bit more detail, but this is just like out there, right? So obviously elopement, we always talk about this in like, why can't they just say running away? But that's the bottom line. The kid is not at the right place at the right space. And a lot of parents, when they see the word elopement, will say, my kid doesn't elope. He doesn't run outside. He doesn't run into the street. Elope is a very harsh word. It's really not necessarily that they're doing something dangerous. It's just they're not at the right place at the right time. Yesterday, I watched a kid during circle time get up and walk over to the toy area. So is that elopement? Yes, it is, because everybody else was sitting at the circle time. Now, is it the same version of danger of eloping, like running out of the classroom? No, but it's still considered elopement, and you want to describe that behavior. So your version of elopement is he's just not at the right center at the right time. Another version of elopement is what I saw yesterday as well, is a kid trying to open the door to get out. Now the door was locked, he couldn't get out. But is that elopement? Sure. Just because we locked the door and didn't let him go doesn't mean he was not trying to do elopement. Okay, so it's a pretty important word, and a lot of people will automatically say, no, we don't have any elopement. But I want you to really think about it. Is he always in the right space at the right time, without and not getting up without permission? Because that's a very big piece of elopement. All right, aggression, physical action towards others that can cause harm and injury. Example, kicking the therapist when you give him a demand. I want to talk a little bit about aggression, because there's different levels of aggression. Just because he doesn't get away with the aggression because you already hired to sort of block that aggression, right, doesn't mean you don't see those attempts. And that's also very important, okay? Because attempted aggression is aggression. So if you see him running after somebody and you have to hold him back, that's aggression. He just didn't get to where he wanted to go to hurt somebody, but he attempted it. And so I want to talk about these behaviors, because a lot of times people will say, no, he's totally fine. And then when I talk to them, they're like, well, I had to hold him back 4 times. I'm like, no, that's not totally fine. All right. The next thing is spitting. I think that's pretty clear, but there's also different levels of spitting. I've heard 3 levels this week alone. I heard where the kid was sort of just spitting, not at anybody, but just. I heard about a kid who actually spit on a peer. And then I also heard somebody actually spit at an authority, like a principal. So there's different levels of spitting, and it can be when they're denied something, but it also could be a stimming behavior where they just spit. Not the ones where they're spitting at others. Those are usually some sort of like demand or anger thing. But just like that constant spitting, that could actually just be a stimming behavior, but it's still spitting. All right, biting. Attempted bites. I want to talk about that, where you see them with their teeth about to do it. You hold them back. That's an attempted bite. You got to mention it. They write using teeth to clamp down on skin or objects. I'm going to say, no, it doesn't have to be that deep. Even a little nip is considered a bite. Okay, now you can talk about the duration, how long, you can talk about the intensity of it, but it is still any attempt to use your tongue, not your tongue, your teeth on something else where your teeth don't belong. That's how I would describe it. Okay. Property destruction, right? Sounds really bad. It sounds like they burnt the house down, but it's not. It can be any type of materials. I saw a kid this week take a test that the teacher gave him back, told him to go home and fix it, rip it up into a ball, and throw it into the garbage. That's property destruction, even though it's their property, it was their test. Okay. So again, there's low level property destruction where you're just ripping out books. And I've had parents say, well, it's normal for a 5-year-old to rip a book. Well, actually, it's not. And those are the kinds of things that we need to teach them. They're not a year and a half. You know what I'm saying? So you have to look at their age and stage and say, is it normal for that age and stage to be ripping out pages from a book? And if it isn't, then that's considered property destruction. That's kind of how you have to, those young years, it's kind of like in between, 2 and 3, they're still ripping out pages. But by the time of 7, they should be ripping out books. That's property destruction. All right. A tantrum. A tantrum is crying, yelling, dropping to the floor, stamping your feet. It could be a quiet tantrum or a loud tantrum. For older kids, the tantrum could just be ignoring you. That's a tantrum. A full-blown kicking, screaming, yelling, shouting tantrum is, I think, what you're used to as a description of a tantrum. But if you are working with a kid and all of a sudden the kid goes into ignore mode, won't look at you, won't work with you, it could be a silent tantrum. Tantrums don't all have to be loud. Self-injurious behaviors is anytime they're hitting themselves, biting themselves, biting their sleeves, biting on their clothes, because that's kind of a combination of property destruction and potentially could be considered self-injurious behaviors. Even if they don't hurt themselves by biting on their sleeves, they're still biting, they're still sort of in that borderline self-injury behavior. Okay. Stereotypy, repetitive movements and sounds that have no function. Hand flapping, any of the stimming, walking back and forth. We see a lot in our high functioning children with autism doing verbal stimming. Okay, verbal stereotyping, like I'm dumb, you're dumb, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. That's what that is. That's repetitive movement. Okay, because they actually usually don't hate you, but they're saying repetitive phrases. And it's something to really watch out for, especially in the high functioning autism, because sometimes it's said in context. And RBTs and parents get they actually believe the words, like, oh, he does hate me because I made him come to the session today. And then when I speak to them, I said, how many times does he say I hate you in a sentence? And they're like, oh, I'm sorry, in an hour. And they're like, oh, multiple times. Is it always demand? Or sometimes it's just them repeating back certain things. So you got to be careful with those statements with the high functioning autistic kids, because you wouldn't believe that what sounds maybe real or in context is just a verbal stereotyping. Okay. Pica is eating things that are not supposed to be put in the mouth. And again, but they're food items. Okay. So, I'm sorry, eating non-food items. In other words, you're not sitting, but it actually could be a food item too. It's things that you're not supposed to be eating at the time that they're doing it. Okay. So eating dirt, eating sand, eating paper, chewing on a book, eating something that's not appropriate for them to be eating. Mouthing, placing non-food objects in mouth without swallowing, like chewing on a crayon. Okay. All right. So those are pretty much the different behaviors that we talk about. And most of the behaviors that I just went over are behaviors you're going to put usually for reduction, right? You don't want they're doing it so many times and you want to reduce that behavior. I think one of the things missing from here, it's not on here, but I do think it's something that should be on here, is like self-stimulus behavior, touching private parts, touching your leg over and over and over again. Part of sort of like a stimming behavior, but inappropriate. So undressing yourself, that would be inappropriate. right? Things like that would also go under this category. And honestly, this should have a category of maladaptive behaviors, because every one of these behaviors that I just mentioned are what we consider maladaptive behaviors, behaviors set for reduction, right? You don't have to increase somebody's elopement. You don't want to increase somebody's pica eating things they're not supposed to be eating. So these are all behaviors that are maladaptive, they're problematic, right? And they're always going to be set now in our program for reduction. All right. Now, antecedents to behavior. So, in the ideal world, we want to control the antecedents. We want to figure out, why is this kid doing the behavior? And we want to change on the antecedents. Very hard to change a behavior unless we understand the antecedents. So I'm going to just give you an example of antecedent behavior. It's one of the number one things I talk to parents, because parents have more control over this than some of you guys in the RBT world. So for example, a child comes home from school. They're hungry. Most children who come home from school are starving. If there's a snack for them the minute, excuse me, the minute they come home, right? Sitting on a table, if they walk into a house smelling of delicious chocolate chip cookies, right? Or even a healthy snack, even fruit, the amount of, it reduces the amount of maladaptive behaviors that you're going to see in the afternoon, right? They get hungry. So knowing the hunger times of a child, right, reduces maladaptive behaviors, right? So what's the antecedent? The antecedent is knowing this and preparing for it. So we know that they need a snack when they come home. We know that supper has to be served on time. That doesn't mean that they're still not going to have maladaptive behaviors, but it's what we in the world around this child can try our best to control. Okay. So let's talk about some antecedents to behavior. Instruction demand related. So how good are you doing in the instruction department? When you instruct this child, are you teaching him using different types of prompts? How much demands are you putting into this child, and when are you putting those demands? So I see parents do this in the houses that I'm in, because I don't even know if it's real, but I think it's like I go in there and they automatically want to like show something to me. So kids come home, they have to do their homework, and you'll hear parents say, okay, get out your stuff for your homework. And I'll say to the parent, that's nice, but that actually needs to be done after snack, right? So first snack, then homework, right? Because you're putting already a demand on them the minute they walk into the door. And by the way, training children not to put demands on us the minute we walk in the door is also something that we need to do. I tell that to working mothers, like, talk to your children if you come home at the same time that they come home. Let's not start with all the demands, because it's overwhelming. Let's first maybe eat something healthy, maybe go for a walk, do something, and then we can talk about the demands, okay? Lack of reinforcement and negative phrasing. So if you're not reinforcing things, and I, again, talk to parents about this all the time. They're like, well, kids should just do homework. No, there's got to be a reinforcement. Like, the reinforcement could be as simple as, you did a great job, right? You're bringing positive phrasing into it. The reinforcement could be more like, at the end of the week, if I get the homework sheet and you've done all the homework, this is what you're going to earn. Okay. Or negative phrasing, right? So if we start the conversation in a negative way, like, I can't believe your briefcase looks like this, right? It automatically takes a person into that negative space, and then they can't think as well. So that's an antecedent, because then you start seeing the behaviors come out, right? Just think of your own life. What happens when somebody yells at you versus somebody saying, you're really doing a great job. I just want to help you a little bit in this one area. All right, access and control related. So you deny access, right? A room is locked up. Your refrigerator is locked up. Item removal and loss of control. So we have to keep our kiddos safe, okay? And so there are things, and we also have to learn to let them earn things, right? So the prizes can't be all sitting out there for, just for them to grab and whatever. That's not good either. But we have to realize that when we lock things up, either because of safety or because we want to save them for some special occasion, that the kids may kick and scream, especially if you've not done it in the past. So I'll tell RBTs that are working with kids, like there's a game that they love and they want to do it over and over and over again, but we really want to get them to something new. And I'll say, you're going to have to put away that toy for a month, or you'll have to put away the toy where the kid can't get access to it and only give it after they do the work that you want them to do. So when you start doing that, you're going to see some maladaptive behaviors in the beginning, like screaming and tantruming. Where's that toy? Where's that toy? Or, things like that, because we are taking away access. It's not like a bad thing. Sometimes we really do have to do it, but it's a reason that this behavior happens. Okay. Transitions, change related, unexpected changes, and ending preferred activities. Transitions are particularly difficult for these children. And we have to be aware of it. We have to be cognizant of it. A new RBT, a new teacher, moving from the classroom into the home, going from the therapy room so transitions are our biggest issue. Why we put that in there? Because if there is a transition, right, or a change, you want to put that into the notes. You want to talk about that. Part of it is that when the child is doing fine, you want to practice those transitions. You want to practice what would happen when a change happens. You want to discuss this so that it's easier when it actually occurs. Social and interpersonal related, peer teasing, lack of attention, or correction, right? So if you're constantly having to correct a child, you're going to see this. So the best way to do corrections is by teaching them how to self-correct, because when they self-correct, they can find their own errors. It can't always be done. Environmental and sensory related. So you took them to a very loud museum, and there's tons of bright lights and tons of strong smells, and all of a sudden this kid is doing behaviors that you haven't seen, right? So you got to note that. Not that we don't want them to change environments, we do, but we have to do it very slowly. I was watching a great series that somebody recommended me. It's called Parenthood. It talks about a high functioning, what they used to call Asperger's. It has a character on the show. And one of the biggest and most difficult holidays for this family was Halloween. And in our world, Jewish world, it would be Purim, right? Because it's noisy, it's loud, people are wearing costumes. And we just take it for granted that, that's what they want to be doing and that's what they want, but the truth is it's a very difficult day for them because there's no schedule, no, and a lot of music and a lot of banging noise. And we have to be cognizant that that may, bring out some of that beautiful behavior that we would like to not see. All right, instructional and teaching styles. So lack of visual supports is a really big one, which is why, as I'm doing this training, I'm trying to provide some visuals, but actually I'm thinking to myself, we really need to create the visuals for this that go along with it, because we as adults are the same as children, and we want to be able to learn this via visual. So visual is just really pointing to a picture, or showing them a video of somebody doing the behavior. And in this case, we have sheets that go along with it with the explanations, and I'm just doing an oral, but I'm not, and some of it I'm modeling, but I'm not doing a great job of visual. So it's something that I'm going to take back to myself as I read this and have Rebecca, who does such a beautiful job with graphics, and make some visuals on this. Okay. All right. So very important to have visual support. Clear directions with not a lot of words. I saw this modeled yesterday by a fabulous RBT that works for me. She literally was using one word direction for this child, and he got a little dysregulated because I walked into the door and he hasn't seen me in 2 weeks. And I was asking him to do a certain card game that he wasn't used to. And she dysregulated him with just using a few words like step back, breathe, count to 10. Did all of that, and then he was able to come back to the table. So think about what regulation tips you are working with this child when he gets into that mode. Rapid instruction. I'm very bad at that. And it's talking slower. It's just not, that's what I do. It's taking the breath and speaking on the breath. Hannah, if you're listening to this, you're very good at that. So it's not talking a million miles a minute. And then inconsistent reinforcement. One day I say you're going to earn a quarter for the same behavior, and the next day I decide to be cheap and I only give him 10 cents. And he knows the difference between 10 cents and a quarter. I loved this parenthood series because this kid has a sister and he's on the sticker chart and he basically is running everything for stickers, which is amazing. And then his sister does something and this kid turns to the parents and says, and what's this sister's consequence? And the parents look at him and they're like, oh my gosh, like that's our normal child, but she was out of line. So whatever consequences you're giving, it has to be across the board and it has to be also within a family dynamic that everybody's getting that same consequence. Okay. Response strategies. Okay. So these are just some of the strategies that you're going to use for reinforcement and motivation. My favorite, I don't know why they had to call this complicated. Okay. We call it the Premack principle, but I used to just call it before I knew ABA. First this, then this. Very simple. First we eat snack, then we do our homework, and then we go outside and play ball. Like, you see the difference? Snack, antecedent strategy, calm down, eat something. Homework, non-preferred activity. Reward, playing soccer with dad. You see that? In that order, okay? So the antecedent one, we said, well, we're not going to make this kid do homework if he's starving. That's something we can set up and have control over, right? Then he does his homework, non-preferred activity. Then you go to the preferred activity. Very good to use for yourself, right? First, I got to run for 30 minutes. Then I get myself a cup of coffee, right? We do this all day, every day, all right? Differential reinforcement, okay? So we're going to reinforce. There's different types of reinforcement. There's actually 4 different types. I'm not going to go through all of the different versions of reinforcement now, but basically try as much as possible to reinforce the good. Sometimes ignore things that could just be ignored, right? And token economy. You want to get them from an instantaneous reinforcement, like here's a sticker right now for what you just did, here's a dime for what you did right now, versus the token economy. 5 stickers equal this. So you want to get them to a token economy because we live in a token economy, right? We don't get paid every single day, right? We get paid twice a month or once a month, right? So the goal for independence is you actually can get to larger prizes working towards a larger system, but you may not be there in the beginning, okay? Next, prompting and fading. All right, least to most prompting. Begin with minimal assistance. That's one version of it, okay? And again, you sort of have to feel this out. Like, can he do this? How much prompting do I need? But we want to always start with the least amount of prompting, okay? We don't want to touch this child and move his hands all the time when we don't have to, okay? Most to least, right? We know this kid has a really hard time. We are going to do it, but we want to always be cognizant that we're going to stop doing the physical prompt and we're going to switch to a visual or a verbal. Time delay prompting, okay? So maybe, which is highly likely for our students, they need extra time. We say something and we want an immediate reaction within 5 seconds, right? But this child needs longer to process. So maybe we give them 30 seconds in the beginning. Maybe we give them 40 seconds. And slowly we want to speed up the delay. Okay. Redirection and blocking. Response blocking, preventing unsafe actions. I have a lot of RBTs today that actually wait till the child destroys something before they take it away. If there is an item in that this kid could really destroy, there's no great thing of letting them destroy it. Okay. If you can actually prevent an unsafe action, I think the best example of that is a kid is running into the street. You're going to pull them away from the street. And you shouldn't think twice about anything that involves safety. Anything. A kid's going to pull the fire alarm. Okay. You block his hand. Don't slap it the way I just did, but you block him from it. Anything that is unsafe. You see a kid leaning over to bite, you pull him away. We do not need to have him actually do it in order to know that he's doing it or wants to do it. Okay. So I think that that's very, very important. And I think that I know we're so scared of touching children and we're so scared of hurting children, but I do believe that when it comes to safety, and it's better that we maybe use a little more force than we'd like to than to allow an unsafe situation. Okay. We can talk about that more in another training, but this is important. Block unsafe behavior. Planned ignoring. Okay. So planned ignoring is planned is the key word. So I'm not just going to start ignoring you when you say over and over again a word. I'm going to talk to you about it first. I'm going to walk you through it. I'm going to videotape it so you see that you're doing it 6 times. And I'm going to say to you, when you do this behavior, I'm going to turn my face. And you practice it, you model it, and you practice it. Then you can do ignoring. Okay? Redirection to a task, right? That's our favorite one because really that's what we want to be doing. We don't want to be holding back kids. We don't want to be ignoring kids. We just kind of want to redirect them back to what they're supposed to be doing. So that's kind of like the favorite of what you're supposed to be. You try that first. And again, redirection is not in case of a safety issue, right? When a kid is running into the street and you grab them from going in front of a car, right? That's not, you can't do little redirection. Hey, but you can do it as you see them walking to the street. Hey, let's turn around and look at the gardening. So you can do the redirection when it's not a safety issue. Okay. Skills acquisition, antecedent interventions, right? So these are things you do before, okay? These are all in the line. I hate the word antecedent. I wish they would come up with another word. Like, it's just preparing. The more preparation you have, the less anxiety. Our kiddos have so much anxieties. You can use it for yourself. You can use it for everybody. The more prep, the less anxiety and the less maladaptive behavior. So an example, shaping, reinforce small steps. Don't say wash your hands. Say go to the sink, turn on the faucet, right? You're showing them all the different things and then you're reinforcing them for every step. Chaining, teach step, teach tasks step by step. We do not do enough of that. We just assume that we're teaching a behavior and we just go for the whole thing. Go to the bathroom and wash your hands. Well, for these kids, that all has to be broken down. Modeling, demonstrating expected behaviors. I had such a fun time with this yesterday because New York City just incorporated yoga as a self-regulation tool in their IEP. So I had to actually do some research whether we as ABAs can also do it. But apparently there is a lot of research showing that yoga is beneficial. So maybe we'll be able to incorporate that in our goals. But I was with a kid who needed to calm down. And I said, you know what, let's try this. And I did some breathing and some folding and down dog with him. And I modeled it. So the dad came out and he was like, whoa, Nicki, I didn't know we signed up for a yoga class, but it was really good. The kid was totally getting into it and he was letting me lead him. So modeling is always the best. And then of course, generalization. You want to practice. A lot of times RBTs will tell me he's amazing. When I'm in the room with him, I'll throw him a ball. He'll throw me a ball. He mastered throwing a ball. I said, okay, amazing. Now go to a park. and they'll go to the park and they'll say, oh my goodness, he won't do it. So very important that we practice whatever skills that we're teaching in multiple settings, because while it's very nice that he can throw a ball indoors, it's not the place he's supposed to be throwing a ball. And we need to get him into what the norm is, which is playing outside, right? So maybe you wouldn't go straight to a very busy park. Maybe you would practice it outside in the front lawn or the back lawn. So you want to do generalization, but in a very progressive way where you're not just automatically taking this kid to a very noisy place. I have a lot of parents who say, I want my kids to behave in a grocery store. I'm like, okay, very, very difficult because it's very noisy, very exciting, lots of stimulation. So I'll say to them, okay, go and find a very small place, not one of these large, not going to Costco as your first example. First, go to a small place. First, model grocery store behavior. Get a, make a little mini cash register, play with money, do that playing first. Then take them to a very small thing, maybe somebody who's having a lemonade stand, right? Like very small, very simple. Then maybe to like a little store before we start the big stores, okay? All right. Crisis and safety prevention. So blocking aggression. Anytime you blocked aggression and you prevented harm, you want to note that. Guided movement. Move a child away from danger. Okay, so what's the difference between blocking aggression versus guided movement? Blocking aggression, I would use more like a kid's about to bite or a kid's about to smack, and you block their hand, okay? Guided movement is they're headed towards the oven and they're about to put their hands in the fire, right? Then you got to move them away from it. Space, break provided, offer a calm area for self-regulation. Great idea, but so many of our houses don't have that space and so many of our schools don't have it either. And make sure that you're following a crisis plan. You always want to think about de-escalating. And I have to tell you, I just walked a kid away from biting. So I want to walk you through this example because I think it's important. So the child was standing at the door, and this is a nonverbal kid who automatically was saying, mama, mama. So that's great. We were so happy that he was calling out for his mother, but it wasn't time for his mother to come. Okay. When he realized that nobody was taking him to his mother, he went running after, I mean, literally leaping after the RBT to try to bite her. And I was actually there and I blocked him. I was like, there's no way, no, like there's no biting, no. And at first he was like, what? And then he realized, like, I'm not going to let him bite. Then he went back to the door and his school is working with him on replacing biting with stamping his feet. So he kind of like did a little tantrum, but very light, like just a little bit kicking his feet, nothing major on the floor. I said, it's okay. I did not do planned ignoring. I said, you can sit and kick your feet by the door, but you cannot bite. It lasted maybe 2 minutes. I was sitting in the activity corner with the blocks, like just, playing with the blocks. He just came over, sat down, and just started playing with the blocks. So what I'm trying to say is that was a de-escalation process, right? He got escalated because he wanted his mom to come. He then went and did biting. We followed the biting protocol. No. Very stern, very clear, only one word. I did hold him back because when I said no, it didn't work. And so I just held him back. He then went back and then I gave him the replacement behavior. Go stand by the door and kick your feet. He did, lasted 2 minutes and came. Yesterday, I was by a family the parents are amazing. They follow all the protocols that we give them. And when a kid comes too close to them, they go like this with their hand, which means back up. Just like this. And it was amazing. The kid backed away. He sat down by the computer. The father said no. The kid said yes. The father said no. He got up from the computer, went back to the table. So it was amazing to watch. You don't need so many words to go through the commands. You don't need to make a lot of statements, and you don't need to talk so much. So I've talked enough. I want to thank you all for joining this training, and I wish you all the best of luck. before I forget, any questions? Okay. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, NSALFER, I'm going to slow down, at learningtreemiami.com. We are here to serve and we are here to support.